Hey guys, Mr. Talbot here for you. We're going to be going into our topic 2.2 on the Reformation. Kind of a lot of information you're going to see here, but it's important to notice that a lot of this is kind of just telling the story. What you really want to be focusing on is answering the critical questions on our key points over here. About 6 questions over here. That's the stuff to be keeping an eye out for. I'm going to try and indicate it a little bit as we go, but definitely kind of just be using that to kind of guide the notes that you're creating. And that's again found in our green folder on Schoology. So with the Reformation, as you might guess by kind of looking at this picture of, all these different white gentlemen, we're kind of based on in Europe for this portion of the course. And in particular, we're going to be looking at Christianity, kind of going back to the Catholic Church we talked about in the previous unit. If you were to think about, in the United States, most Americans, if they follow religion, are Christian. And within our community, we see lots and lots of different Christian churches. There's lots and lots of different denominations now. Most of them are Christian, but there's differences within each of them, and kind of how we end up getting to that point is what we're going to talk about in our video today. So the Protestant Reformation is going to involve kind of a break and a split up of the Western Christian Church, better known as the Roman Catholic Church. But with it is actually going to be, we're going to see an increase in Christianity as a result of this. So the number of Christians in the world is actually going to increase because of the Protestant Reformation. And also the number of different Christian churches or denominations, things like Lutheran and Baptist and Calvinist and Anglican and all that is going to kind of come out of this. What we look at when we look at the term Protestant Reformation, two words I kind of want you to pick out are in Protestant is the word protest. We're going to see these people are protesting what's going on in the Catholic Church. And because they're protesting it, they want to initially reform the Catholic Church. And that's where Reformation comes from. The idea was by this point, the Catholic Church had kind of gotten very involved in political things across Europe and less so in spiritual things. So after the Roman Empire fell, the Catholic Church kind of replaces it as the unifying political force of Europe. And we would see within the feudal structure that rises a lot of relationships between different lords and the local bishop. And the Catholic Church gets very, very involved in politics, very, very involved in like military affairs, things like the Crusades. Between that, more involvement in the Catholic, in the like military matters and political matters, the Catholic Church is kind of becoming corrupt. Now they're doing some good things at this time as well, like providing social services, hospitals, that kind of thing. But they're also collecting taxes that go with it, which was limiting the power of the different monarchs and stuff. Within the Reformation, we're going to see the Catholic Church's power is going to go down and the different monarchs' powers are going to go up. And we see that model with the kind of King Henry VIII in the top right there. And so the Catholic Church, in addition to kind of what's going on with their political side, on a spiritual side, the argument of the Protestants is going to be they've kind of lost their way. And they're kind of becoming more about money and less about, the spiritual stuff. So we would see things like the selling of indulgences, which was like, you did something bad, you sinned. Well, if you give money to the church, then you're going to be forgiven. And so basically, you could, in a sense, from the belief standpoint, buy your way into heaven. So that's something that this guy Martin Luther gets upset about. And the Catholic Church was saying, our leader, the Pope, and our bishops and our priests, they're the ones that tell you what's going on with Christianity. What they say kind of goes. And you don't need to worry about what's in the Bible because we'll tell you what's in the Bible. And so Luther's going to kind of transform some of these ideas. And so don't feel like you got to get all the notes off of this slide. I've tried to kind of hit a couple of them. So, we've already hit kind of what was going on with the Catholic Church and their power. Here we're kind of looking at, what did Martin Luther do and what are the effects of it? So Martin Luther is, the early Protestants, they wanted to reform the church. They didn't want to break away from the church and start their own thing. That's what happens, but the initial goal was to reform. So Luther has these different complaints about what the Catholic Church was doing. The selling of indulgences, the involvement of politics, kind of letting the rich influence the church. Luther's against all those things, and he kind of sends these complaints, his 95 Theses, to his local bishop, kind of his boss, because he's a Catholic monk. Luther was hoping that, like, hey, I wrote this so eloquently and my argument is so great that you're going to want to listen. And that's not what ends up happening. Luther is going to be kind of kicked out of the Catholic Church. He's what they call excommunicated, which by the beliefs of the Christians at the time meant that Luther was basically being like condemned to hell. So Luther's ideas aren't listened to. And Luther's not the first one to notice some of the issues in the Catholic Church. What Luther has going for him is that he's German and that he's in the same place the printing press was invented about 70 years earlier. So Luther's ideas are not just going to be read by his local bishop, they're going to be spread um, across Europe and across Germany. And so eventually Luther's going to kind of full on break and create the Lutheran Church. And he's going to say things like, you don't need the church rituals and stuff that you have to have. Your faith alone can get you to heaven. You can read the Bible because we should translate the Bible into your native tongue. Before this, it was really only in Latin, so only a learned, educated monk could read it and explain it for you. Now we're going to translate that into your native language, so then you can understand it. This, with the printing press, is also going to lead to an increase in literacy across Europe, which is going to pay dividends not just in a religious standpoint, but also in scientific matters as well. Because Luther says that, anyone can kind of read and make their own interpretations on the Bible, it's not going to stop with just Luther's interpretation of the Bible. It's going to then spread. And so that's kind of where we're going to see, as all these ideas are spreading with the printing press and things like that, we're going to see that all these different denominations kind of rise up. In addition to that, a lot of these political leaders that have kind of been playing second fiddle and kind of been behind the Catholic Church, maybe behind their Catholic bishop and certainly behind the Pope, now they're going to see, man, we got a chance to take some power back. And so there's kind of this incentive now to maybe, if you're like a local lord or a king, to maybe push the Protestant Reformation a little bit. Maybe because then as the Catholic Church is going to lose power, it's going to be able to tax less, then you can tax more and you can have more money and power yourself. That idea is going to start spreading. And again, it kind of just begins running away. And that's where this is kind of a chart showing, all the different splits within Christianity. And it's important to notice that, yes, the Catholic Church is losing its power, but the Roman Catholic Church is still around today, still important today. But all these different branches spread, and each of them, because Christianity is a missionary faith, each of these religions is going to try and go out and convert people. And that leads to conflict among the Christians, but it also leads to kind of an increase in the number of Christians throughout the world. Not going to go into this slide, but if you're curious, and want to pause, what are some differences in Protestants and Catholics? You're welcome to check it out. That's not really the focus of this course. It is. I will point out again that the Pope and the bishops and stuff is important in the Catholic Church, less so in Protestants. That's what kind of leaves the door open for these different political leaders to take power. Now, the Catholic Church was not just going to sit back and say, oh, well, I guess we're just going to lose some power, and that's just, it is what it is. No, they're going to make some reforms. They're going to also do some fighting to kind of keep their power. So we see the Catholic Church kind of go at the same time in kind of two opposite directions. On one hand, you've got the Pope who's going to say, Luther's kind of right about some of this stuff. We should probably stop doing some of these things like the selling of indulgences. We should probably have better priests and we should probably train them, not just have it be whoever's kind of available in the village. And so those are kind of some positive reforms that the Catholic Church is going to make. They're also going to make some not so positive reforms, like we're going to try and go and find leaders of the Reformation and we're going to excommunicate them, and then we're going to get people to convert back to Catholicism, and if they don't convert back, we're going to burn them, or we're going to torture people that are not following the views we say. We're going to ignore what these new scientists like Copernicus and Galileo are saying. We're going to ban lots of books. So the Catholic Church makes some positive, like progressive reforms, and then some very anti-progressive reforms at the same time. To kind of summing up some things for you here, we've got this Counter-Reformation. The Catholic Church, again, they're making some reforms to make it better, but then there's some things that they're banning. With the Reformation in general, we get new forms of Christianity. And with that, we see a decrease in the power of the Catholic Church. While the Catholic Church is still around today, still important, not as important in Europe. However, the Catholic Church realizes, well, this is all happening at the same time as the age of exploration. And so the Catholic Church is going to say, well, we might be losing power in Europe, but we could now be trying to convert people in the New World, like Latin America. We could be sending missionaries to China, and we're going to see a big growth of Christianity in those places. Unfortunately, while all these groups in Europe are still Christian, there's enough division between them and enough kind of political conflict that the Reformation is also going to spark about a century and a half of wars across Europe, and millions of people are going to die in Europe because of what goes on with the Protestant Reformation, and all the conflict of fighting for the Catholic Church, fighting for your Protestant church. So about 150 years of political conflict there. As those wars come to an end, though, we kind of see a centralizing of power, and the European monarchs and European countries that we kind of know today become more centralized and more powerful, again, at the expense of the Catholic Church. The flip side, though, is that while those monarchs are going to become more powerful, it's kind of a temporary thing, because you now have a European population that is kind of grown up and used to using information and things like the printing press to challenge the Catholic Church's authority. Well, we're soon going to see them they're going to turn around and they're going to challenge their new monarch's political power, and that's going to lead to a thing called the Enlightenment, which we're going to hit in our next unit. And so the Reformation doesn't just stop with the reforming of the Catholic Church. That's going to lead to future reforms and kind of make more of the European society that we see today. You don't need to take notes on this part here. This is just kind of showing you, again, that century and a half or so of warfare across Europe. And you're going to know some of these wars last generations. And again, also with the Reformation, again, once you're challenging the church's authority in spiritual matters, you're also going to see kind of an increase in science. We'll hit that again a little bit later on in our next unit. So hopefully this has been helpful. Taking some notes, finishing up a summary, and doing that check for understanding after you felt the study guide, and all that would be good stuff to finish out topic 2.2.